Hello and welcome to Take Me Home, the podcast offering a social democratic alternative for the politically homeless. I'm Hilary.Salt.
And I'm Sebastian Moore.
And we are recording this on a interesting day, shall we say.
England have won a World Cup match against Mexico. Sorry if no one's caught up with that yet. Nigel Farage has just resigned as an MP. Mm-hmm. And I went to a bookshop that were giving away free books. I feel like I've fallen asleep and I'm in this weird dreamland, and then I'll wake up at some point and realise none of it was actually real.
And England have been knocked out before the qualifying rounds.
I don't know which one of those is the most unrealistic. I don't know. Yeah. British politics, what's going on?
It's so weird, isn't it? Yeah. So we had the news this morning, didn't we, that Nigel Farage was going to make an announcement at 2:00. And there was all kinds of mad speculation. One of the mad speculation things turned out to be true.
I texted you, so I was planning on talking about Farage anyway because of the political donations sort of scandal, and I think that's an interesting thing to dive into a little bit. And then I texted you to say, actually, we should probably hold off until after 2 p.m. because Farage is making an announcement. We're recording this now at 3, and Farage has just said he's going to resign as... And I even said I think there's a chance he might resign as MP.
Did?
And as I said, I thought...
I thought you were being fanciful, to be honest.
Yeah.
There you go.
So, okay, what's the logic behind it?
Behind him resigning?
Yeah. Is there logic?
To prove that the people are behind him and the bad, evil... elites who don't like Nigel Farage are going to lose in a battle of the kind of popular will.
Is it not I am Spartacus moment then?
Who is Spartacus? Him?
Yeah, where everybody, the residents of Clacton stand.
Yeah, they all stand up.
We're with him. I suppose the problem with that is that what are they standing up to fight against? And it's not the evil Roman Empire or like it and you might say the establishment, and there's legs in that for sure. But it doesn't seem to me that this is a clear cut one where it's like Farage is protesting a particular thing.
Well, in his speech, he was talking very much about the hounding of him for these donations he's received. So you're going to talk about that, aren't you? But also about the way in which his family members' details have been disclosed in the press and put them under a lot of pressure and potentially under, dangerous circumstances, which you can understand him not being very happy about that.
Yeah, but it doesn't tap into the... let's say the zeitgeist or the thing which gives Farage fuel politically, which is the things that people, feel in their daily lives. And you might say, immigration is a massive thing for a lot of the people that are voting reform. The cost of living, it doesn't encapsulate a narrative about, well, this is why we're going against them. This is about political donations. It seems really out of keeping with kind of his platform.
It does.
This is an early prediction, but I think it's going to backfire on him massively.
Okay.
And we'll see that. I suppose you have two potential roads that we could go down. One is the people rally behind him, and it's bold and it's seen as a very brave thing to do, to resign and then to put his fate into the hands of his constituents. And he wins. He comes back. He's re-energized, moves on. And it's sort of like he's won this battle in the war. The other possibility, I think is more likely, is that a lot of people, particularly people that are not necessarily anti-Farage or pro-Farage, but just people in the middle of that whirlwind, say, where's he was MP, why has he resigned? And it doesn't have a lot of logic behind it, because you say, okay, you're now trying to encourage people to make you an MP for Clacton. You were the MP for Clacton. And it just seems a bit childish. And I think it plays into a lot of the criticisms about reform that they're not serious about governing. And if they wanted to put forward a very serious front about this is what we're going to do, this is why we're needed, they should be going forwards towards preparing for government rather than backwards to trying to fight a by-election in which their leader stands.
I agree. And I think there's also a danger that Restore come out of this better than Reform do, possibly.
A danger for reform?
A danger for Reform, yeah.
I think so. It'll be interesting to see. I think Restore will love this. I think, and it's the famous thing about chess, isn't it? It's like the best move in chess is not the best move. It's the one that your opponent least wants you to play. And all of Reform's opponents will be licking their lips thinking, this is hilarious.
Exactly.
Now we've got a chance to, because I don't think you don't have a massive amount to lose if you are Labour, Lib Dems, Conservatives, or Restore, Greens, whereas you have a lot to win.
Exactly, yeah. So we've started on the kind of gossipy front there, haven't we, in terms of the political shenanigans.
Yeah,
but you wanted to look at more serious aspects of it, didn't you? And perhaps before you start, because I think we should start there, I should just say that I'm going to talk about ITV and Sky, the takeover. So hold on for that. But shall we start with talking about the more serious aspects of party funding, party donations, the whole way that where we've ended up has kind of started?
Yes. Okay, so a little bit of background and then we can maybe talk about political donations in general. There was reporting a couple of months ago about Christopher Harborne. Christopher Harborne is a British Thai businessman. He has made a lot of money in cryptocurrency and he gave a personal gift of £5 million to Nigel Farage in the weeks leading up to his announcement of coming back into politics. If you remember that in June 2024, when a lot of people wanted him to come back to fight the general election and he said there's not enough time. And then he changed his mind, he came back. And it seems to be around that time that he received this gift of £5 million.
Okay.
And that the Guardian, I think, broke that story a couple of months ago. And there was a bit of a media fanfare about it. And then the more recent one is this chap called George Cottrell, who was jailed for wire fraud in the US in 2016. I think there were 21 offences on the rap sheet, let's say. And he has given a lot of gifts to Farage. And Farage has said that these are all in a personal capacity. And obviously the media is linking this somewhat nefarious character who's been in jail to Farage, and he is part of Farage's inner circle, it seems. So Farage is receiving a lot of criticism for this, for both the Harborne case and Cottrell. And I thought we could go into political donations in general and talk about maybe what we think, whether we think they're an issue and what we think should be done about them. Did you have anything else to add on the Farage case with the donations?
The only thing I would perhaps mention is that all that was broken, wasn't it, in the Times at the weekend?
The George Cottrell one.
Yeah. And in his speech today, he really had a go at the Times. So it kind of feels like there's something more going on there.
Yeah.
He suggested that it was the Times who disclosed the address of his daughter.
Yes. So I believe they used a photo of his daughter's house. And I didn't understand. This is the first I'd heard about it when Farage commented on it. But I guess it's using that as an example of the wealth of his children. I'm not sure. Farage was incandescent about this and was visibly angry. That's probably the most, and a lot of people have been commenting saying Farage appeared quite angry in recent interviews, and some speculating that he might step back from politics. That's why this press conference at 2 p.m. was quite interesting to see what he decided to do. I did think it was interesting that that was probably the most human that I've seen him, because even though I found him quite distasteful in that press conference, that was the moment that I sort of thought, oh yeah, actually, we don't want. And he said, my daughter has no intentions for public office, has no desire to be in the public eye. I've never used her, in photo shoots or anything like that. I've always kept her separate. And I think we do, if we want politicians of talent, we have to encourage people to stand without the fear that their family might get dragged into it.
I agree.
Now, there will be, and this is often the similar arguments get brought up when people question the media's right to scrutinise politicians about, is there a line that they can go too far? And Farage referenced the Leveson inquiry.
Yes, he did.
And I thought it was interesting because that was if you look at when people talk about populism, and we did that episode with Frank Ferretti.
We did.
2 weeks ago, which is really interesting, him talking about this. There is an element of populism where the populists go after the media, and people are concerned that, particularly with Trump in America, but you see this in a lot of countries where people accuse the politicians of trying to censor the media and silence them. And there is a difficult balance, and there is a certain level of ethics, I think, required within journalism to make sure you don't step over that line. I wanted to reference something that Farage said in that press conference, which I thought was interesting when talking about these donations. He said, "I have done nothing wrong. I haven't broken the law." And I thought, that's interesting because you could easily have done something wrong and not broken the law. And part of, I think, what is the problem with our politics, and something we've discussed before, is the marriage between the legal and the moral. And in the past, I think before, let's say, 20th century, the moral was in the purely religious realm. And as mainline religions sort of ebbed, people tied their morals to the law. And you hear, I think this happens a lot, but to me, I'm saying that it doesn't matter if we're not questioning necessarily whether it was legal or illegal. That is important, and that needs to be cleared up. We're also questioning, is this right? Should our politicians be receiving millions of pounds in donations just before they run for office?
Quite, yes, yeah. But when he says, I've done nothing wrong, I've not broken the law, he's trying to address the kind of both the moral and the legal question, isn't he? He's trying to say, I've not done anything wrong morally, and I've not broken the law. Do you not think?
I think that's interesting. That's an interesting reading into it. I think if you hear what he said and his intonation, it's clear that he sees those as one and the same. Right.
Okay.
So he said, I've done nothing wrong. I've not broken the law.
Okay.
Right. Whereas I think what you're saying, and this is how it should be, I think, is I haven't done anything wrong, nor have I broken the law.
Yeah.
Right. Which is an interesting nuance. He also said, do we want leaders that know how to make money? Which I thought was a really interesting line, because he's, and this goes back to our analysis of the political situation, which is the left and these left and right elements of, that it's sort of dying, and yet our politicians aren't willing to let it go and move on to the next thing. And that is very much this old narrative of people on the right know how to make money and they're good at business. And Farage is basically saying these left-wing, he mentioned communism at one point, but these left-wing ministers in the cabinet, none of them have got any business experience. And I thought that you can make that argument, but if you're referring to your ability to make money based off a political donation or a personal donation, as he would say, it's not the greatest claim to any sort of business acumen.
He was claiming that he'd done a lot of other things, wasn't he? He was claiming that he's been an influencer and that's how he's made money, that he's given recommendations for certain financial products and he's made money from that. So he did do a list of other things he'd done because I was wondering whether, is there something else about to come out that says Farage has got all this money and he's trying to answer in advance of that, this is where all that money's from. It almost felt like there was something that he was addressing that we didn't quite know about yet.
Yeah. To me, it's similar to a lot of a lot of right-wing arguments around tax when they say, why should I be paying this tax? I've not I've not got any reward, from paying all that tax. And you think, but you've made your money based on a lot of the infrastructure and the resources that the country has been able to offer based on the tax that's come in the past. And it's similar with this thing of his claim, which is that this is all personal, it's not political, so it's not part of his political. And I think that's not right, because the influencer, for example, the only reason that he has those 7 million followers that he claimed on TikTok and wherever else is because of his political career.
Yeah.
And you can't say that, oh, that was completely separate. That was based on my talent. That was based on my business acumen.
I think it is really hard to separate out those two. And isn't it, I mean, you pointed out that kind of chronology that it seems that he got that big donation, the £5 million donation, just before he decided to stand again. So in other words, having that money in the bank gave him the confidence about his security to allow him to stand. So how can you say that that's not related to his political life? Exactly.
And so the rules on this state that gifts should be declared, anything received within a year of you taking office should be declared if there is any doubt whether it was for political purposes or personal purposes. So political has to be declared. If there's any doubt, then it should be declared. And that is the case that the Lib Dems, for example, are making. I feel like we need to give the Lib Dems more of a shout out. They don't get much exposure, do they? Somewhat self-inflicted, but anyway. Reform have said that the gifts were unconnected to political activities. But like you've just said, it's really hard to make that case when the fact that he received that £5 million donation meant that he was then able to run, and perhaps was part of the reason why he decided to come back into politics.
Yeah. And what I don't quite understand is, given that there's always a danger that this will become public, what is the problem with just making it public anyway? Because making it public doesn't make it taxable or anything like that. It's not that it makes it less, worth less to you. It's just that it means that it could have some influence on what the public think of you. And if he's very confident that it's not wrong for him to have done it, then why would he not just declare it?
Exactly. And that's where I think this line about there being any doubt is important. If you've received £5 million, £5 million, this isn't like, a couple of £100 that someone gives you and you think, oh, I didn't even consider that was related to my political activities.
Yeah.
Someone gives you £5 million just before you become leader of a political party that you were involved in setting up, and you think there's no doubt about needing to declare it or not. I think that's,
Because he actually referred to it, didn't he, as a lottery win?
Yes.
I had what was akin to a lottery win, he said.
And Christopher Harborne, we can come back to George Cockrell, but Christopher Harborne, who was responsible for that £5 million gift, he gave Reform £9 million in a one-time donation last year. He's also donated to the Conservative Party and others, and it was the largest ever political donation in the UK, £9 million. He also donated, I believe, £1 million to Boris Johnson after he resigned as Prime Minister towards his private office, which, I mean, brings up all sorts of questions about the integrity of politicians if they know that once they leave office, they're receiving lots and lots of money. I mean, we've I think talked before about the speaking gigs that they have, and Boris Johnson did the circuit. But I think this really throws into repute. Is that the word? Disrepute.
Yeah.
The integrity of our politicians. And I think it's a real problem. And you and I are both passionate about renewing our democracy. And I think what's integral to that is money. Because whilst the most important aspect of democracy is one vote for each person, and there is incredibly equal, not everybody has the same amount of money. And it means that people have more influence if they are able to donate a lot of money. I'll quickly run down the list of political donations for the first quarter of 2026.
Okay, well,
as, it's highly requested. So in 2026, first quarter, who received the most amount of money in donations?
Labour Party?
Reform, £9.2 million.
Oh, because they got the 9 million.
That was from last year. This is separate.
Oh,
I believe.
Okay.
And the Conservatives were second with £4.2 million. Labour, 4 million. Lib Dems, 2.2 million. The Cooperative Party, a party that perhaps some listeners may not have even heard of, because they have this
It's the Labour Party, really.
pact or whatever it is.
Yeah.
They're just embedded within the Labour Party. So a lot of Labour MPs are Labour and Co-op MPs.
Yeah, Andy Burnham is.
Right, yeah, quite right, yeah. £439,000. The Greens, £163,000. The Open Party, £129,000. Never heard of them.
Open Party?
Yeah, I Googled them a couple of weeks ago because of this. Don't know much about them. And I'm not including any parties that are only operating in Scotland, Wales, or Northern Ireland.
Okay.
Advance, £28,000. Reclaim, £20,000. And the SDP, of which we are both members.
Full disclosure,
£15,000.
Okay.
Restore on here, which, and I'm not sure why. I don't know if they are, if they will, because they established as a political party during the first quarter, perhaps they don't have to announce until the second quarter. The donations. Don't know, but we will. Yeah. We'll bring news about that when we find out.
So just say that. What period was that again?
That was the first quarter of 2026.
Okay. Wow. So those are all big numbers, aren't they?
Big numbers.
And
what's most noteworthy about that is that the Greens received so little money. Yeah. £163,000. And they say that they have very strong ethical guidelines on receiving donations. They have a page about it on their website.
Okay.
And full credit to them.
Yeah.
And the Green Party membership is more expensive than that of Reform, for example.
Okay.
So they get money from their members and from their subs.
Yeah. Would you? What's the solution to all this? So I would say there's a real problem, isn't there? That people that are bankrolled by people who you can't help but think they're going to do a favour to. So, you have big businesses giving money to the Tories or the Labour Party or anybody, and you can't help but think that that's not given for nothing. So, should we ban those kind of donations?
Well, just think about the developers that have given money to the Conservative Party over the years. And then when we see that the Conservative Party are so hesitant to build any new homes, and we talked about that enforced scarcity of housing, which drives house prices up, you start to think, well, maybe there is a bit of influence here. And I think the better way of thinking about it is, rather than did Christopher Harborne have any influence on Reform, is to say, why on earth would you donate £9 million to a political party without any influence? Why would you do that? It's so hard to even comprehend somebody giving that amount of money and saying, no, but I don't want to say anything that you should do with it. Even like at my church, for example, we get donations and the people have said, I want you to use the money for this. So it's restricted funds. You have to use the money for a certain thing. Getting a new boiler, for example.
Okay, always handy.
And so rather than sort of nibbling around the edges and trying to stop people from having influence, you asked about solutions. I think there are solutions that can stop this being a problem from the outset. I want to just, before I go into those, just say three things that the government is doing in the wake of the George Cottrell news. They've announced, this is Darren Jones, who was, I don't know if he is still the chief secretary. He was chief secretary to the Treasury. Then he became the new position of the secretary to the Prime Minister's office. Or, do you remember that?
Yes.
It was a new position they created. I suppose he still is that until Keir Starmer fully steps down.
Yeah.
He said that there are three things that they're going to add into the new bill, which I think is the Representation of the People's Bill, and they're going to add them in as amendments because that's already going through Parliament. There are three things: £100,000 cap on people donating if they've only been in the UK for less than a year. So this is to get rid of the potential for foreign money influencing British politics.
Okay.
And I think on the on the more establishment end, this is like the Lib Dems being concerned about Elon Musk, for example.
Okay,
He's donated quite a bit of money to Restore.
But George Cottrell is British, isn't he?
Yeah. The second thing is that they have announced new checks to assess whether companies are legitimate, and they're doing that by seeing whether they're making a profit, right? And this is supposedly to deter people just setting up a company so that they can fund a political party and not have scrutiny on them.
Yeah.
And the third thing is to require all candidates in an election to disclose donations. And you and I know about this intimately from all the elections we've stood in. I think this is, rather than only in your period of election, you have to disclose anything that's come before, I think. But bless you.
Sorry.
Couldn't really tell that. And of these then, I think it's a classic example of sort of the Labour government doing a bit, but not really enough, and not willing to do something really quite radical with this. £100,000 cap on people donating if they've been in the UK less than a year. Why don't you say you can't? You've got to be able to vote in an election if you want to donate money to a political party. I think that's really reasonable. Yeah. And therefore you've got to be a political subject. Yeah. You've got to be a British citizen. I'm a bit concerned about the requiring all candidates to disclose donations. One of the things I like is the fact that we as more minor candidates in the elections we've stood in, we don't have a massive amount of scrutiny, and we're not spending much money. No. But it is really challenging, actually, as a political candidate to do all of the forms and to make sure, and we're always nervous about getting it right. And I worry if you're just constantly increasing work that needs to be done, that is unfairly, that's disproportionately affecting those from smaller parties and raising those barriers to entry, of which there already are quite significant, hurdles for a smaller party to. If you've got a big back office to do your the work for you, it's obviously easier, isn't it? I met, I stood in the council election, and I met my councillor who won in that election at a volunteer event. And I said to her, today is the day you got to get your election expenses in. I said, have you done all yours? And she said, they'll have been done for me. Thought, all right. Nice.
That's nice.
Some, isn't it?
Yeah. I did all the spreadsheet myself.
So, my ideas.
Okay, solutions.
I think this comes back to, and I think you have to reduce everything, and particularly when we're in this pre-political time, as you've called it, where we need to re-establish our ideas about democracy. We need to think about who we want to have influence, and do we want businesses to have influence? Do we want rich people to have influence? I want ordinary people to have influence. And by ordinary people, I mean all people, right? But people on an individual level. And that means I think you could make the case to say we're not going to allow donations from businesses. A donation has to come from a person, and like we just said a second ago, from a political subject. Yeah. I think that goes for donations from trade unions as well. I think it's unfair that a trade union donates money to a political party when its members might disagree with that and might say, and there is definitely a lot more accountability with trade union donations than there is with businesses. But I think why not allow their members to decide for themselves who they're going to donate money to? I love this idea of, rather than banning things, you say, right, let's flood the market with donations, right? And there's a great idea that I first heard about it in Andrew Yang's presidential campaign when he was standing to be the Democratic nominee for president in 2020. Okay. And he had this idea of democracy dollars. And so each citizen receives 100 democracy dollars. It's like a voucher, and you can cash it in. And I think you could do this through the Electoral Commission in the UK. And you cash it in and say, I want you to send £60 to the Green Party, for example. I should say the Social Democratic Party. Okay? Yes. If you get democracy pounds, send them to the SDP. Yeah. We are biased in this. But that's a great way of making these massive donations a bit redundant, because you're increasing people power and you're giving people more of a chance to have a say in democracy.
I mean, obviously that's a public expense. Those
Yes, yeah,
those
of course,
democracy dollars have to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
And the fact that
I'm talking about this magical money tree.
Oh, okay. I mean, you're giving democratic control over them. That's good.
Yeah.
But I just worry. The kind of idea that you have state funding of political parties feels to me a little bit odd, because I just think you could never imagine the state funding the AFD, for example, could you?
Right, so they have and I don't know too much about this, but I know that in many European countries they have public funding of political parties at a level that it's hard for us to imagine, because there is public funding of political parties in the UK, which few people know about, and it's based off your electoral performance and such. And some people would argue for increased public funding for our political parties to decrease the influence of these big donors. I think that is a way of doing it, but you're then giving the power to the people to say, where do you want that money to go? And they're only getting that money if they motivate people enough to cash those vouchers in.
Yeah,
you know, that is a voucher that I would have 100 democracy pounds if I don't use it. The money isn't required if I don't use it.
Okay, so you need to have some kind of political appeal to get people to do that.
Yeah,
I would just be worried about things like people, like they go around collecting votes. People go around collecting democracy dollars. Am I being very cynical?
Right. I mean, quite rightly cynical. But then isn't that interesting that when we start to think of it like that, we immediately come up with concerns about people going around to people's houses to get the money. And we're not concerned about that with all these rich businessmen in the city. That's
true, yeah. Business people. Strictly.
But I'm just mimicking Farage.
Yeah.
He said, all these men that have gone out and earned their money.
Who did, yeah. Well, yes, okay. So is there any alternative solution to state funding? I mean, is there not an argument that just says you get rid of all that business funding, you don't allow businesses to donate. Individuals, as you say, people who are entitled to vote can donate, but that's the only level of donation that's allowed. And, what would that do? So what do people spend their campaign money on? They spend it on things like adverts and leaflets and all that kind of thing. I mean, would we miss any of that if it all went?
I think that's a very good question.
Not sure.
And I think that's a good place to start is, okay, it's got to be individual donors.
Yeah. It would still mean that the same people would get the big bucks, though, wouldn't it? So, for example, if you look at the way that the trade unions fund the Labour Party, historically, that would have been individual trade union members who would always have voted Labour, giving a donation to the Labour Party via their trade union. It's not it's still them giving it, really, because they have to decide to pay the political levy. And it's the fact that they wouldn't necessarily vote for the Labour Party anymore that kind of makes that not work anymore. But it still feels that was a way that ordinary people could give, whereas if you just say people can only give directly, it will still be the rich business elites who will be funding the same parties, won't it?
But why can't those ordinary people just give directly to the political parties?
They can, but they wouldn't, would they?
Well, but isn't that like the arguments to say, but people wouldn't go and vote? It's the thing we don't.
Yeah.
It's thinking less of people. And I sort of tend to believe in people and think and create the need for it, and to say, these political parties need your money in order to further the arguments that you agree with.
Yes, yeah. And you could donate to any political party. You don't have to be a member of them.
Yeah, I believe so, yeah. Well, that's already the case, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Well, that's an interesting concept. Maybe we need to do some more thinking on that and think about what it means for SDP policy.
Yeah.
There's some homework for us.
ITV,
shall we move on to ITV?
Yeah, people are concerned about Love Island.
They are. Great British Bake Off.
Bake Off?
Yeah.
Is that right? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't watch TV, so
yeah,
this isn't particularly relevant to me, but let's see.
Yeah. So the reason I think this kind of hit the headlines a bit more than it might have done is that two things were announced on the same day. One was Sky takeover of ITV, and the second was the takeover of EasyJet, the I was going to say the airline, but it's tried to be a bit more than an airline recently. It's tried to be more of a
Like hotels
package
and things,
holiday.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Tried to replace the kind of Thomas Cook and Monarch and those kind of people. And the fact that both of those were announced on the same day led Will Hutton. I dug out the state we're in by Will Hutton to remind myself who he was, really. So he was the economist. He talked about the stakeholder society, and he was writing kind of in the wake of the very red in tooth and claw Thatcherism days. And I actually quite liked a lot of what's in here. I was thinking I must read it again, especially as it's in Take Me Home colours. So he tweeted, a sad day for the UK, but nobody cares. We're more and more a vassal state of the USA, or something like that. He tweeted, which is interesting that somebody like him, kind of with Blairite tendencies, would tweet something like that. I think we talked quite a bit about that idea that Britain doesn't have any independence anymore. But for somebody like that to be talking about it, I thought was interesting. I mean, as an aside, that EasyJet thing is quite interesting because European rules require 50.1% of any European airline to be owned and controlled by European nationals. So they will have to put together some kind of a weird structure of the business so that can look like it's the case.
The EU requires that.
Yeah, yeah.
EasyJet, was it a British company?
Yes, well, it is. Yeah, do you remember Stelios? You remember Stelios, don't you? Yeah. Now, he still owns 15% of the shares, and he's not declared his hand, so we don't know which way he'd jump. I still think there's a possibility that there could be another bid, to be honest. So, I was going to say it's all up in the air, but I probably shouldn't say that, should I? Sorry.
Dare I ask? Oh, no,
sorry.
You shouldn't say that. Dare I ask, but why are we beholden to the EU rules there?
Because they control European airspace broadly.
Why don't we control it?
I'm not saying that's right, but that is the way it is.
We should control it.
We should.
We should control French airspace.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. Anyway, go on.
So anyway, that's beside the point. So that's a takeover by it's a Canadian wealth fund and Goldman Sachs. So it's effectively a US/Canadian takeover. But the thing I really wanted to talk about, that was an aside, is the Sky and ITV issue. So obviously the kind of background to this is we're in this kind of new world of the media where you have all these streaming services like Netflix and Amazon and not Dreamcast, they're a film company out there. So, all those kind of businesses.
Comcast. Okay.
Well, it's Comcast who are behind the Sky takeover. We'll come on to them.
Okay.
Yeah, but I just wanted to get, they feel that there's all these big companies that now dominate the airwaves. Can you still say that? It's not really in the air anymore, is it?
Internet waves.
Yeah.
I feel like there's
the
always
media.
companies behind companies. I remember as a kid when we would say, like, who owns Lamborghini?
Yeah.
And it's like Audi, I think, own Lamborghini, but then nothing is owned by what you think it's owned.
Exactly.
So like the media companies, it's always a name you've not heard of.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Disney is another one that was in the back of my head there. Anyway, so we're in this kind of brave new world, or not, where there's all these big streaming companies, and that's made things pretty difficult for people like ITV. ITV's share price, listed on the UK Stock Exchange, has fallen by about 40% over the past 5 years, so it's clearly struggling. So that's the kind of background to this proposed takeover. Now, takeover is by Sky. And when I think Sky, who do you think of when you think about Sky?
A person?
Yeah. What do you think about? Who owns Sky?
I don't know.
Rupert Murdoch. Do you not think that's not what you still think? No. Because it's not true anymore. But that's in my head. Really? I still think Rupert Murdoch.
Sky B2B or something. I remember all of that as a kid. Yeah.
all that, yeah. So Rupert Murdoch, James was his son, I think, who kind of took over a lot of the positions. And that's kind of what I think Sky is, but it really isn't that anymore. So it was taken over by Comcast in, I think, 2016, quite a long time ago. And they're the people who own NBC Universal, are they called? American. They own a lot of cable stations. So they are, a big, massive US multinational. And they really are the kind of controlling force behind Sky. So Sky have made a bid for ITV. Now, what is ITV? I think that's probably worth thinking about first. And I think ITV is actually 5 things. And they're 5 very different things that kind of all, bundled up together, which is probably why it maybe doesn't work very well as a business, because it's got all these different things that it does. So first of all, it is a public service broadcaster, and it will continue to be that until 2034. That gives it some power that perhaps other people don't have. So, for example, we know at the moment that for the first time we're probably watching real-time TV, aren't we, with the World Cup? And those are the kind of crown jewels of broadcasting, which have to be free to air in the UK. So they're kind of being shared between the BBC and ITV. So ITV is a public service broadcaster. And one of the articles I read said that there was a time when being number 3 on the remote control meant a lot. But how many of us just press number 1 or 2 or even 3 on the remote control these days? So it doesn't mean as much as it did, but it still means something, I would say. So it's a public service broadcaster. It's a news provider. So it has its own regional news provision. It also owns 40% of ITN, which is what we used to call ITV News. It's the standalone company that provides news services, not just to ITV, but ITV obviously has a really big stake in that. So it's a news provider. It has ITVX. I don't know if you ever use that app.
It's a streaming platform.
Correct.
Everything's a streaming platform nowadays.
It is, yeah. So that is part of what it is. It's also a provider of a platform for advertisers. And that's quite important, particularly in terms of the Competition and Markets Authority investigation that there will have to be of this. So that's quite an interesting element. I think that's one of the things that is, certainly in terms of the business pages of the newspapers, that's what they're talking about quite a lot, is what does this mean about advertising, people's access to advertising. So what's the other thing it is? That's only 4. So it's a public service broadcaster, it's news, it's a streaming service, it's an advertiser, and it's something else.
I was going to mention ITV Studios. I don't know if...
It is, that's it,
okay.
Yes. So it's a provider.
Separate company, right?
It's separate stream within ITV.
Okay.
And actually that will move to a standalone business. So it's a provider it's a producer of content.
And they make TV shows and then sell those TV shows often to other channels. Like they make one for the BBC, don't they?
They make loads of things. I mean,
I think of the one that was mentioned in the news article I read about.
Okay.
A big show.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm really... This is why I won't make it as a politician, because I won't get the pop culture stuff.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
You ask, who's your favourite couple on Love Island this year?
Yeah.
Candidate.
Yeah.
Sebastian. And
Yeah.
I was like, no idea.
No, I'm the same. But Love Island is one of them. So it's 5 things. And if we think about how do we feel about a US multinational taking over ITV in each of those 5 things, I think it is quite helpful to think about it separately for all of them. So first of all, as a public service broadcaster, how do we feel about one of our major public service broadcasters being owned by a US multinational? And I don't know about you, it makes me feel a little bit queasy. That doesn't feel right. And they will have to meet some of the commitments that ITV has given as a public service broadcaster. For example, to create new content and to show new content. So they will have to do that. I'm guessing they will also have to do things like show party political broadcasts in the state. As long as ITV has that public service broadcasting commitment, which it certainly has it till 2034, they'll have to do those kind of things. That kind of doesn't feel right to me, and clearly there's an issue about what government might say about this, and government haven't really said anything very much so far. It's breaking news, but Lisa Nandy, who is the Minister for Culture, Media and Sport, may very well intervene in this. We don't know how, but she certainly won't be intervening on X, because she has taken her department off X.
Now we're talking about not ITVX, we're talking about X.
XX.
Twitter, that's how I understand it.
Yeah.
And she doesn't tweet on Twitter.
She's taken her and her department off it.
She no longer X is on X. I don't know if there's a verb now for X.
I don't know either, no.
Okay.
Anyway, that's an aside. So, part of, in terms of a public service broadcaster, I feel a bit weird that we should be owned by an American multinational, and I think it's right that government should be thinking quite carefully about whether that's appropriate. Kind of similar point I have on the news. So if the news is going to be controlled at least in some way by an American multinational, do we care about that? And in particular at the moment, if you didn't like ITV News, you could turn to Sky News. Now, will those two things become broadly the same thing? Now, they have, at the moment, given a commitment that they will continue both of them separately as independent news sources, and they will continue ITV's regional news provision. But you kind of think, well, how long are they going to continue running two things that, next to each other but separately? Because that doesn't feel very efficient for a business. And in my head, I've got the idea that, there'll come a time when they say, it's not really efficient to do this. We'll have to combine them. So it kind of reduces the level of choice you might have in your news providers, which, again, I feel a little bit nervous about. Don't know how much conspiracy theories you want to think about here, but you might...
Let's do some conspiracy theories. But you never ask.
You might remember that last week, or was it the week before? Time goes very quickly at the moment, doesn't it? Keir Starmer, remember him?
Keir Starmer.
I'm so cross he's going because I've just learned how to spell his name as well. Keir Starmer said that they wanted to change the algorithm. They wanted to force media companies social media companies to change the algorithm to give precedence to public service broadcasters' news before other people's news.
Interesting.
Now, I think we all thought at the time, always talk about the BBC, but there is a bit of a conspiracy theory that maybe that is a way to persuade Sky to continue to have ITV News, because ITV News as a public service broadcaster would get that bump up in the algorithm if that happens. So that's an interesting point.
There are so many levels, I think, to why that is wrong.
Yeah.
I don't really know where to start.
Okay.
Not the conspiracy theory, the idea of forcing social media companies to bump mainstream news up the algorithm. I can't even get my head into the gears to argue the other side.
Yeah, that feels so wrong, doesn't it?
It feels like the death of the establishment, and this is where they lunge out and they do the weirdest things.
Yeah.
And we'll see this a little bit more as we go on. But.
Yeah. So the news item, the news issue, I think is an interesting aspect of this, because it does to me say that A, news controlled by a US conglomerate, B, less choice in your news provider. Thirdly, maybe talk a little bit about advertising. So the combined forces of ITV and Sky would control about 70% of linear advertising. So that means advertising on TV when you turn it on and you're watching it as an actual channel. And some people have said that actually it's the advertising revenue that at the moment ITV and Sky are fighting over advertising revenue. And this will mean that they're not anymore, because effectively it will be the same company that's providing two platforms, but it's providing the platforms on which you can advertise linearly. So some people would say, but certainly, some business analysts are saying that that's the real motivator behind this, is because Sky doesn't want to be fighting for advertising revenue. So it's very much a defensive move to take out one of its competitors who gets the advertising revenue. So, again, that to me is a little bit worrying. And the Competition and Markets Authority will certainly want to test the waters on that, I think, quite significantly. I think the way you could maybe say that that's not as much of an issue as it might be is that if you look at advertising across all broadcast media, including streaming, they would only control about 30% of that. So, as a podcast listener, you're probably used to your podcast getting interrupted by somebody advertising something, and that's not Sky or ITV doing it, that's somebody else. And so, if you look more widely at broadcast advertising, it's not just linear broadcast advertising. They control a much smaller fraction of it. But certainly the fact that they will be quite a big monopoly of linear advertising is a concern. So that, I think, is something that there's a real possibility that might be something that stops this happening. Depends on how much the CMA want to push back against it.
I have a couple of thoughts.
Yeah.
One is that I think we should be careful in our age of massive technological change, not to be rooted to things that will be redundant anyway. I think one of those things is TV.
Yeah.
And I think, when I've been watching, I go to my brother's and watch the football and I see the adverts, and I forget that there's advertising, linear advertising, it's still going on.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a nostalgic thing from when I was a kid, and I don't think it's I don't think it'll be a sad loss.
Okay.
For it to go, and obviously advertising takes on new shapes.
Yeah.
I don't mind 5-second adverts on YouTube, but when they do 15-20 seconds, I get a bit annoyed.
Yeah.
I want to say two nice things though.
Okay.
One about ITV and one about Sky.
Okay, go.
Sky News, Beth Rigby.
Okay.
I think she's great. Which might be a controversial opinion, I don't know. We'll see what our listeners think of Beth Rigby. But I remember her from in the build-up to the 2024 general election, being one of the very few journalists to properly hold to account the candidates and the prime ministerial candidates, let's say, Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer, and doing a really good job to properly question them. Because I think the BBC too often falls into that trap of trying to not be on either side, and forgetting what the impartiality really truly means.
Yeah.
ITV, this is slightly less political, have been brilliant for their the highlights of the World Cup, right? And I'm probably, if I'm going to be watching highlights of the overnight games that I probably shouldn't be staying up for, I'm probably naturally going to sway towards the BBC as a patriot, as a British patriot, but quite early on I realised the BBC was spoiling the results in their thumbnails and ITV weren't, and I think you'll see that from YouTube viewing figures that people have been a lot more receptive to the ITV highlights because they are not spoiling the results, and they've been great. And it seems like a small thing, but that's massive to people that are wanting to watch the highlights, when they wake up in the morning, and that's great as a way of on YouTube you can say don't follow this. I don't want to see this channel come up anymore because I didn't want BBC coming up in my feed with spoiling the results.
Yeah.
So now I don't see any of it. And that's the quick response that you get from the consumer to see whether they're actually enjoying this thing or not. And I think ITV have been a little bit more responsive to what viewers want and the BBC, and that might mirror a bit about the sluggishness of the BBC, the fact they don't get that real-time response from their audience normally, and so they're slow to actually make any changes. So ITV have been brilliant on that.
The BBC have been criticised, haven't they, from doing their coverage from Salford?
Well, that was the other thing that I was going to say about ITV.
Yeah.
And I spoke to somebody, a friend of mine who works on, she works on BBC Sports as a director. She's often filming the Athletics. And she said when they went to do I think it was the European Championships. I think it was the World Championships Athletics in Budapest. And it's like a 20 quid Ryanair flight. But the BBC is committed to all of these green initiatives. So they rather than flying all of their staff out there, they bought them train tickets to go from the UK to Budapest, and it cost a fortune. But they wanted to do that because they couldn't have the carbon emissions of those flights on their ledgers. Yeah. And she said that if they can only justify it, apparently the BBC, if it's in Europe to fly their team out there, if it's on a different continent, which the World Cup is, they now have to do them from the studio in Salford, which is just down the road. Mm-hmm. And while I was watching the World Cup, I thought, nah, not happy about that. I think you have to be out there.
I think so
really,
too.
It really does matter. And ITV have an incredible studio.
They do.
Overlooking the East River and the Brooklyn Bridge, the Statue of Liberty, Manhattan, all laid out before them. And they've really got, I think, one up on the BBC. Yeah. And you'll notice that they'll find it easier to attract the top pundits because of that, because they get to go out there. And I don't know if you noticed that Alan Shearer is out in America, and he's doing he's working alongside the commentators, that pundit role. Clearly because he wanted to be out there rather than having to sit in a studio in Salford.
Yeah, indeed. Can't blame him.
However nice Salford is.
Indeed, yes.
Don't want to lose our Salford listeners.
Absolutely, exactly. So that was we've gone down a little byway there, haven't we?
We like byways.
We do, we like byways. But to bring us back to where we were...
should British companies be sold to American multinationals?
Yeah. So we were going through the things that what do we think about that question for the different 5 things? I mean, in terms of ITVX, the streaming service, I feel a bit less bothered about that. The fact that that's going to be owned by Comcast as a streaming service and Sky as a streaming service. It's just one less app, isn't it? And maybe that's a good thing. There's so many different apps now. When you want to watch something, it's like, what's that on? Which app do I have to open to watch that? I get so confused.
A real populist would come out and say, we're going to get rid of these apps. No more apps. That would an election. But I think maybe we disagree on this. Like, maybe we differ slightly. I don't really care so much. Like, okay, Comcast can have ITV News. Like, I don't think there's such an importance about ITV News. Like, I think it's just redundant. I have so much faith in independent journalists and people creating their own platforms, which are much more meritocratic than a mainstream media, which has let us down time and time again.
I suppose the only thing you would say is that certainly some news coverage, you need to be big enough to be able to have a team to do it. So, there's a real problem, I think, particularly with the overseas coverage these days, that nobody seems to have enough people in-house to be able to do it well. And, it's okay, you can send somebody from a local paper down to the dispute down the road to cover that, but you can't send somebody to an overseas territory to cover something there and find out what's really going on, can you?
I think we're getting to that point where channels are big enough to, if they've got enough subscribers on their platform, they're able to recruit a team of people. I mean, we've talked about the Mill before, Manchester Mill, where they've been growing, so they now have full-time staff. And I can imagine an online magazine like that gets to the point where it can afford to send people abroad and report on these stories.
Okay, well, let's see. Let's wait and see.
ITV News, name a news reader on ITV.
No.
Can any of our
couldn't.
listeners, is anyone there thinking I'm an ITV News stalwart?
Reginald Bosanquet was that? Was he from the 1970s or something? I think to remember ITN.
I do not. I've not watched TV news in probably 10 years.
No, I don't think I have. But I have listened to it on the radio.
It's just so depressing, and it's the tone and everything. And it's I'm much favour reading news, and then you can check different papers and check different sources.
Yeah.
And nowadays you can check individuals as well that can in real time refute certain claims.
Yeah. So perhaps finally, just to talk about ITV Studios, which is the production company. So that is the thing that will stay outside of Sky. So what happens, as I understand it in this, and obviously structures can change, but as I understand it, the proposal is that Sky will buy all those other 4 things off ITV. And I think it's like 1.2 billion they're going to pay for that, of which 950 million will go to the shareholders. But some of it will remain in this standalone ITV company that will still be there, that will be the thing that makes the shows. And actually, I think some of the things that are made by Sky will actually be put into that. So I think Love Productions, that makes Great British Bake Off, I'm sure that's one of your favourites, will be put into that vehicle, that ITV vehicle. Now, again, if you talk about conspiracy theories, but that will be a standalone company with a lot of content, and there's the proposed agreement that Sky will promise to buy so much off that company, so it's got a stream of income guaranteed as part of the deal. It has a lot of other things that it sells to other people. And that starts to look like a really nice, interesting standalone business that will be debt-free, have some cash in it, and, a guaranteed pipeline of work. I think it's hard to imagine that will stand alone for very long. I'd have thought that will be snapped up by somebody else as well at some point. So whilst we will still, for the short term, have a thing called ITV, which is a production company, I can't imagine that surviving, because it will just be, it'll have a massive for sale sign over its head, really, because it will look such a nice company to buy. Debt-free, guaranteed income. I'd buy it. So that's my take on what's happening. What should we be doing about it? I mean, I do think I would really be encouraging government to kick the tyres on this. And I would be encouraging the CMA to kick the tyres on it. And any commitments they can get, for example, on continuing regional news, I think would be worth getting. And I think it kind of almost fits into the discussions that are going to started already, really, haven't they, about the BBC licence fee? What is the long-term future of broadcasting, old-fashioned broadcasting in the UK? And they should be thinking about it in those terms as well, I think.
Yeah.
But interesting times.
I've just thought we should have a segment called Take Me Home Takes.
Take me home?
Take Me Home Takes.
Takes?
Yeah.
Meaning?
Well, you just had your take.
Oh, my take.
That was my take on...
Oh, okay, right, okay.
Take Me Home Takes.
Okay, yeah, sounds good to me.
Take Me Home Takes. First take, it's coming home.
It's coming home, yeah. We still believe.
Take Me Home Takes is coming home. It's just all these synchronicities.
Yeah. Saturday. 10 o'clock.
Yeah. I don't think I'll be coherent if I talk about England at the World Cup. Oh, wow. What an amazing match against Mexico. I went to a pub.
I watched it at home with the dog.
It's just such an unusual opportunity to go to a pub at, and it started at 2 a.m. So sort of falling asleep at 1:30, thinking, okay, just half an hour to go until it starts. And then I came out of the pub, it was in the city centre of Manchester, and I think 4:30, and it was light, just dawn, the blue dawn, the light behind us on Deansgate, and loads of people. One guy came up, sort of like tried to hug me. It was like,
yes,
and it was great. I saw an older couple yesterday walking down the Fallowfield Loop.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that. And I was on my bike, and they were both in England shirts, and I went, "It's coming home!" And they went, "Yay!" It does feel like it's bringing people together.
It does.
Long may it continue.
Yeah. Yeah. So come on, England. Good luck, England. And we will see you next week.
Thanks for listening.